In this presentation, we will be carrying out an analysis of Brazil's economic and trade policy in the purview of the country's membership in the World Trade Organization. This poster shows the general topics which are being covered in this presentation, like the major trade partners of the country, the major goods which are sectors which are contributing to the GDP of the economy, the goods and services schedule which the country has signed in, the trade disputes in which the country is involved, trade agreements, and the general outline of the country's trade policy and recommendations for improving the trade policy.
Now, I'll be giving you a general outline of the economy of Brazil's GDP. In the early 2000s, Brazil experienced a period of strong economic growth driven by high commodity prices and booming domestic market. The Brazilian economy started to slow down in the year 2010, and later on, due to the COVID pandemic, it fell again by 3.3% in the year 2020. The economy rebounded since then with a GDP growth of 4.6% in the year 2021, and it is expected to grow by 2.5% in the year 2023. When it comes to the general outline of Brazil's economy in terms of the major sector contributing to its GDP and its major trading partners, from this graph we can infer that food sector is a major contributor of Brazil's GDP, and the major food contributors include soybean, corn, sugarcane, oranges, etc. The second most major contributor to its GDP is the manufactured goods, which includes machinery, electrical machinery, paints, aircrafts, etc. When it comes to the major trading partners, the major trading partner of Brazil is China, which is followed by USA and Argentina. Now, I'll be giving you a general outline of the economy of Brazil in terms of export pattern and trade openness. This given graph traces the changes in the export pattern of Brazilian economy, and the major takeaways are that the total worth of export rose from $215 billion to $280 billion, while the level of export from Brazil rose in case of all regions mentioned in the graph. The export to US, Asian regions, and Middle East fell on a large scale. The same has happened in case of the other Mercosur countries as well. So Mercosur is an agreement which we will be talking about in the upcoming slide. The trade openness graph shows that there happens to be an increase in the trade openness of Brazilian economy as a sum of imports and export as percentage of GDP is on uptrend. Trade statistics of the Brazil. From this graph, we can infer the major importers of Brazilian commodities. The single most importer is China, 21.4%, followed by United States, 15.4%. The examination of the given chart shows that Brazilian goods are mainly being imported by the developing countries. Now, the major export and import commodities. The major commodities exported by Brazil can be listed as ores, oil seeds, mineral fuels, iron and steel, etc. When we look into the commodities that are imported, it includes industrial and electric machinery, fertilizers and organic chemicals, pharmaceuticals, etc.
Now we will be looking into the trade agreements which Brazil has signed with other WTO members. The first trade agreement was the Mercosur Trade Agreement, which came into effect in the year 1991, and it is signed by countries like Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. And the objective was the creation of a common market in South American region like the European Union. And it also aimed at the elimination of tariff and other trade barriers between the four member countries, and also promotion of free movement of goods, services, and people between the member countries, and also encouragement of cooperation in other areas like infrastructure, energy, and technology. And the major achievement was after 1995, tariff rates on products like sugar and wheat export was reduced by almost 100%, and the major area of concern was it failed in coordination of trade policies and also promotion of movement of people between the signatory countries. The second trade agreement is the Latin Integration Association, which came into effect in the year 1980, and it was signed by countries like Brazil, Argentina, Bolivia, Ecuador, Cuba, and other countries. And it aimed at the promotion of trade and economic cooperation between the member countries in LAIA, and it was based on the principle of preferential trade and contained provisions on rules like customs cooperation, technical standards, dispute settlement, etc. And this agreement, after this agreement was signed, the trade rose between the member countries by around 500%, and it also gave Brazilian business access to over a market of 500 million people. And the slower implementation of the policy, as well as the exclusion of key economic players of the region, was a major shortcoming of this agreement. Now we will be looking into the goods and services schedule signed by Brazil. Good schedule talks about the special treatment that a WTO member must provide to traded goods of other WTO members, and services schedule talks about the same thing, but in the case of services. The first good schedule is the Mercosur Common External Tariff, which was signed in the year 1991 by Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. And as per this agreement, the four countries agreed to eliminate custom duties and implement a common external tariff of 35% on certain imports, even for countries from outside the bloc. The second good schedule is the Agreement on Trade and Economic Cooperation signed by United States and Brazil in the year 2011, and it was signed to enhance the cooperation on trade and investment between Western Hemisphere's two largest economies, which is US, United States and Brazil. The two major agreements that comes under the services schedule of Brazil is the Agreement on Basic Telecommunication Services, which is having 73 signatories, and which necessitates the signatory nations to ensure access to basic public telecommunication services in a non-discriminatory manner in international trade. And the second one is Information Technology Agreement, which was signed by 80 the World Trade Organization members, and it stands for the elimination of all import duties on a wide range of products. While looking into the tariff policy adopted by Brazil, we could say that Brazil was following a conventional tariff policy regime, and the reasons for the same could be protection of domestic industries, response to the global financial crisis, and retaliation against another country's trade barriers and revenue generation.
Trade disputes in which Brazil was involved in. Trade disputes in which the country was involved in. Brazil has been a part of a lot of trade disputes, and the first one among them is a dispute between Indonesia, which happened in the year 2014. The major reason for this dispute was the imposition of trade restriction on import of Brazilian chicken meat to Indonesia. They filed a case with the WTO, and WTO ruling mandated to remove the trade restriction, but so far Indonesia have failed to doing so. Second dispute is the dispute between Brazil and Thailand in the year 2016. So the dispute was that Brazil alleged that Thailand was providing subsidies for its sugar sector, which were inconsistent with the WTO rules. So WTO panel set up for inquiry sided with Brazil and found that Thailand's quota and price control system, as well as supplementary payments to cane growers, constituted export subsidies that were inconsistent with WTO rules. Thailand complied with the ruling and removed the subsidies in the year 2019. Third dispute is a dispute between Brazil and USA which happened in the year 2018. This started when the US imposed tariff on steel imports from Brazil and other nations. The US was required to remove the tariffs on steel imports from Brazil as mandated by WTO panel set up to resolve this dispute. However, the US has not yet done so.
While looking into the trade policy adopted by Brazil, we could say that the following points are the major policy adopted by Brazil. And first one is Brazil always takes active participation in multilateral trading system and also make utilization of the opportunities offered by the same. And it also believes in strengthening the trade-related dispute settlement mechanism of WTO. And they also believes in the special and differential treatment to developed and developing nations to ensure fair trade for all nations across the globe. And they also acknowledges the role of preferential trade agreements in international trade, and they uses deregulation and privatization mechanism of the domestic economy as well as fiscal and monetary policy reforms to ensure a fair and free domestic as well as international trade. The mentioned points here are the major recommendations for improving the trade policy of Brazil, and it includes streamlining of customs procedure, which is a major hindrance for the trade in Brazil, and increasing trade openness in services because trade openness in services is less in Brazil scenario, and strengthening of intellectual property rights in Brazil is another major aspect which could improve the trade policy of Brazil. Now, we could end this presentation by talking about the general conclusion that can be made from the analysis made in this presentation. We could say that Brazil's economic and trade policies are generally aligned with WTO principles, mainly the principles of non-discrimination, transparency, and most favored nation treatment. And Brazil's WTO membership also enabled the country to open up its economy for foreign competition and improving its economic efficiency. And also, the country's membership in WTO led to a reduction of its tariff rate, enabling its customer access to diversified products and so on. And Brazil's WTO membership also gave the country a voice in the development of global trade policies.